Welcome everyone to tonight's council meeting for Monday the 12th of April 2021. We need to start the meeting first with a public forum, and I must inform people speaking in the public forum that welcome to the members who wish to speak. The public forum is being recorded. By speaking at the public forum, you agree to being recorded. Please ensure that if and when you are speaking at the public forum that you are respectful to other people and use appropriate language. Albury City accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures made during the course of this public forum. So we'll start the ball off by... No. Okay, I've just been advised by Councillor King, because he's indicated in the general body of the meeting that he'll be standing up for this item, he'll be standing up for the public forum as well, just so you understand what's happening. So when we shut the doors, that'd be great if someone could close the doors. So we have two speakers on the same issue and speaking together, and I take Ms. Rebecca Johnson and Mr. Gordon Bartlett are both on Zoom in relation to item CM 13.1, the DA's 10.2020.38108.1 telecommunications facility brackets data storage centre and 2-lot subdivision 121 Airport Drive, East Albury. They support a recommendation to approve the development application. So who would like to start speaking? You have 5 minutes starting now. Who would like to start the speech?
So I will. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Mayor, councillors and staff. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of the development application for a telecommunications facility and 2-lot subdivision at 121 Airport Drive, Bree. My name is Rebecca Johnston and I'm an Associate Planning Manager at Bar Property and Planning. By way of background, my firm has been working with Leading Edge, who are the proponent, for the last 18 months. And we've been preparing a number of development applications almost identical to the one you have in front of you tonight for the purpose of rolling out telecommunication facilities in regional locations throughout New South Wales. To date, telecommunications facilities have been approved in Newcastle, which is where I'm based, in Tamworth, in Dubbo, in Bathurst. There's currently a development application being considered by Coffs Harbour Council, and we're preparing to lodge an application for Wagga Council. Now you have on the screen, I understand, a location plan. So the proposed development is located within the Albury Airport broader airport precinct. And you'll find in front of you a number of reports with regards to the application. These include the independent assessment prepared by an independent planning assessor, the council officer's report, and the full development application itself. Now the reports are comprehensive, so I won't go through all of the details of the reports, except to suggest that there are probably two main matters that council should be considering when they're making their determination in accordance with the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act. So the first of these is to determine how the development should be characterised. So what exactly does the development consist of? And then secondly, is the site that has been selected a suitable site for that development? Could I move to the page 79, the staging plan, please? Thank you. So this is just a little plan of the proposed development. What is proposed is 2 data centre facilities. Now these consist of a prefabricated building which houses all of the computer storage racks, the data points and all of the electronics. And then around this building is constructed an external shell structure which is known as a solar shield. We can then see the installation of the associated infrastructure. So there is a panel of air conditioning condenser units, generators which are used for backup power in the event of failure, and some electrical kiosks in that front setback there. cabling, and then the solar panels which are installed on the roof of the solar shield. Auxiliary development proposed as part of the application includes the construction of a driveway and car parking, which you can see at the bottom of the site there, the removal of a small number of trees, and the construction of associated stormwater infrastructure, landscaping, retaining walls, and security fencing. Now, the proposed development is characterised as a telecommunications facility, which is a definition that's included in the Albury Local Environmental Plan, as well as in the State Environmental Planning Policy Infrastructure 2007. A telecommunications facility is defined in brief as any part of the infrastructure of a telecommunications network, where a telecommunication network means a system or a series of systems that carries or is capable of carrying communication by means of guided or unguided electromagnetic energy, or both. Now, this definition also sits within the Federal Government's Telecommunications Act. Now, this facility that's being proposed tonight forms part of a wider communications network that I mentioned earlier, the one being rolled out by Leading Edge throughout New South Wales. It will work by providing additional computing platform between users and the cloud by establishing a platform for faster data transfer. The proponent themselves, so Leading Edge data centres, also hold a telecommunications licence, which designates them as a telecommunications character in accordance with the Federal Act. So on this basis, you can see that the development itself is very much defined as a piece of infrastructure, or very similar to a utility provision, and very much fits the definition of a telecommunications facility. If we then look at how the site operates, it's an operation that runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but it's what's called a dark site, which means it's unmanned for the majority of the time. On average, the site will be serviced on a monthly basis. This frequency is a little bit shorter in the initial startup phase, but that monthly maintenance period is only a few hours each month. The site doesn't provide any offices, it doesn't provide any amenities for staff, and it doesn't have any waste removal requirements. So it really is a very inert piece of infrastructure. It certainly can't be characterised as a commercial use or even as an industrial use. It's part of a communications network and part of that communications infrastructure. If we then move on to what is the applicable environmental planning instrument to consider the facility under. So as a piece of infrastructure, we look to the State Environmental Planning Policy Infrastructure 2005, also known as the ISEP. So this provision, this instrument, allows for the provision of infrastructure, such as telecommunications facilities on any land, regardless of the zoning. So even though we might see that the site is zoned for infrastructure, it's actually zoned for infrastructure for airport facilities. So we can actually set that aside, and the ISEP permits this type of development on any zone with development consent, which is what we're seeking tonight.
Okay, are you done? I think your 5 minutes has well and truly been expended. Is there anything you wish to quickly sum up with?
Only that it's a development that's permissible with consent. It satisfies the requirements of the ISEP, which is the prevailing instrument. It's also a site that the assessing officer noted was conducive for development, and that the layout, design and form of the proposal would fit within the development of the broader area.
Okay, thanks, Rebecca. Any questions, councillors, for Rebecca? Staff questions?
No, I've got
You've got a question for the staff during the same period, yeah? More than happy to take that question.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, for the opportunity. I just want to try and get a quick indication of how much land there is. I think that this is taking up about 2,200 square metres from my recollections of the report. What land is available in that precinct for further development? And how many square metres of land is still available for future development?
Mr. Christie.
Thank you for the question for you, Mr. Mayor. If you're talking about in its immediate vicinity of this development, because obviously there's land all around the airport, but I think it's on page 73 of the report there, we've got a bit of a map that indicates that there's around 12,000 square metres if you looked at this emergency services zone, plus there was around 8,000 square metres above that as well. So there's around 2 hectares in essence of undeveloped land that's bounded by Airport Drive to the east, to the north, and the street to the west, which I just don't have the name on it just there, my little picture, and then Dalton Place to the south. So there's about 2,000, about 2 hectares of land that's the only development on that land is the Emergency Management Centre, which takes up around 4,000 square metres of that 2 hectares.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
No worries. Councillor Clacken?
Yes, if I may, through you. First to the most relevant member of staff. It says in the report and notes in a couple of instances that the land is owned by Albury City Council. Can you confirm the basis on which this land is available to another entity for use, i.e. is it we're selling the land or they're going to lease it? And if it is leased, what duration that lease is for? And then I have a question for the presenter, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Squire, I think you've been deferred to there by Mr. Christie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, thanks for the question, Councillor Glacken. So Albury City is proposing to lease the land area to Leading Edge Data Centre. The provisions of that lease will be the same as they are for all of our other airport land holdings. From memory, the term of the lease will run to when all others fall due, which I believe is in the order of another 15 to 20 years, but there will also be a further option.
Thank you.
Any question for Ms. Johnson, is there?
Yes, indeed, if I may, through you.
Okay.
And thank you for that first answer. Can you confirm, please, what duration this build is being anticipated to last? In essence, there are often builds that are anticipated to last 50 or 100 years plus, but there are other builds that are created around a 10, 20, 30 or 40 year timeframe. Do you have an indication as to what sort of period this is anticipated to last? Please, thank you.
Yes, Mayor, councillors. I can speak to the construction of the building, and my colleague from Leading Edge can certainly speak to the length of the lease provisions. But the data centre building itself, so the building that contains the electronics, the racks of servers, etc., is a prefabricated building. It's constructed in a factory just north of Newcastle and will be trucked to site. So it is certainly a removable structure. The external solar shield is constructed of perforated metal cladding. It's both in design and its construction anticipated to look and feel as a lightweight structure, and certainly able to be dismantled or demolished fairly readily at the end of a said lease period. And the remaining infrastructure, the HUD stand for car parking, landscaping, security fencing, and associated stormwater infrastructure is certainly the type of infrastructure that is readily repurposed or removed as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the answer. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Just one follow up on that one that Mr. Bartlett may answer is what is the Councillor Glacken wanted to know what do you envisage is the lifespan of those materials in that particular structure?
Thank you very much. I gather that was Mayor speaking. The life of the infrastructure we've designed as a minimum of 30 years. The reason being it's a very, very solid infrastructure, and it's also built to very high quality. The data center is what we call tier 3, which is the highest tier that's currently available in Australia in metropolitan areas, and outside of metropolitan areas it is far superior to any of those. So around about 30 to 35 plus years.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Bartlett, while you're on a roll, in relation to the compatibility, you say it's tier 3 at the present time, as it has clearly or would have ability for upgrades as the upgrades occur with technology?
It does, and also we've got the potential to upgrade the actual capability of the security internally to work with high security government and other organisations. And yes, it is designed to be upgradable for the full life of its existence.
No other questions. Just one more from me, Mr. Bartlett, probably you to answer this question. In relation to the location that was chosen, can you explain to the group why that location has a high value to this particular activity?
Sure can. Look, a data center is very important infrastructure component of the wider networking and communications. And with data centers, what we want to make sure is that in a worst case scenario, such as our neighbours next door might be active in, we've still got communication. So to do that, we need to be above the PMF level, or probable maximum flood level, so that in the worst possible scenario of the dam down the road a bit breaking open and flooding everything around Albury, we'll still be above that level for the floor and all the components, and we'll still be operational, and the emergency services, if they wish to use our facility, will be able to stay in communications.
Okay, the other question is the proximity to existing data and existing infrastructure. Was that one of the priorities too in your assessment of that site?
Yes, it certainly is. The fact that there was fibre close by, the fact that there is electrical capability and capacity in the area, and also the fact that the area potentially has the potential to develop into a strategic aviation development area, and we could support that as well as all the other business that currently exist in there.
Well, thank you, Mr. Bartlett, and thank you, Ms. Johnson, for your thorough presentations this evening, and we'll be considering that item later on the report. Thank you again. So Councillor King could be returned to his seat. That'd be fantastic. Thank you, councillors. Again, welcome to tonight's council meeting for Monday, the 12th of April, 2021. We'll start with the opening prayer and acknowledgement of country. If you could all stand, please. Lord, we ask that you guide us in our decision-making, protect us in the community we serve from all that is evil, and strengthen our unity for the welfare of the city. We wish to acknowledge the Wiradjuri people as the traditional custodians of the land that we meet upon today. Pay my respects to the elders past, present and future, for they hold the memories, the culture, tradition, hopes of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that contribute to our community. Thank you. Just for the record, Councillor Vanderven has vacated his seat as he is on call and he's taking an urgent call, so he will be returning to the chamber. Recording and webcasting. I must inform you that this council meeting is being webcast and recorded. By speaking at the council meeting, you agree to being recorded and webcast. Please ensure that if and when you are speaking at this council meeting that you're respectful to other people and use appropriate language. Albury City accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures made during the course of this council meeting. An audio recording will be made for administrative purposes. Conflict of interest declarations are received by the chair. I've received one from Councillor King. It's non-pecuniary significant. Brief description. I'm the owner of an airport facility at the Albury Airport. I've lodged an objection to this DA. The item is 13.1 and the action is to leave the chamber. Mr. Zachnich.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. This advice to the council meeting relates to the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979. Under section 10.4 requires a person submitting planning applications or submissions regarding a planning application to disclose any reportable political donation and or gifts to any local councillor or employee of council. Reportable political donations donations include those of or above $1,000. The disclosure statement forms are available on council's website or from the customer service centre and must be lodged in accordance with the Act. In dealing with development applications, councillors need to take into account specific planning matters contained in the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act. Accordingly, the provisions of section 4.151 of that Act are set out in the Council Officer's report, detailing planning issues to be considered. The Local Government Act 1993, section 375A requires that a division be called whenever a motion for a planning decision is put at a meeting of the council. Planning decision means a decision made in the exercise of a function of council under the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act, including a decision relating to a development application, an environmental planning instrument, a development control plan, or a development contribution plan under that Act, but not including the making of an order under Division 9.3 of Part 9 of that Act. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Zachnich. Apologies. Thanks, councillors. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council receives notes and accepts the apology of Councillor Cameron and grant leave of absence for the meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderven.
Second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Gluckin, you had a question?
No.
Okay. There be no further question. I have to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you. Merrill Minute. There is no Merrill Minute action plan. CM6. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Gluckin.
Thank you. Through you to move the recommendation as a motion that the following action plans be received and noted. 1, 2, 3 and 4, actions complete for noting only, actions awaiting response from external parties, actions in progress and long-term issues, more than 3 months. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
I'll second the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Gluckin, did you wish to speak to that?
No, that's fine, Administrative. Thank you.
Okay. There appears to be no question or debate. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Confirmation minutes of the previous meeting held on Monday, the 22nd of March, 2021. Councillor Doxey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Happy to move the following recommendation that the minutes of the council meeting held on Monday, 22 March 2021 at 6 p.m. be confirmed.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderven.
Happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey, did you wish to speak to that?
Thank you.
There being no questions or debate, I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. There are no reports from community forums. No notices of motion or rescission. No presentations of deputations. We're up to reports and minutes of committees and working parties. The minutes of the Mama Advisory Committee meeting held on Friday, the 26th of February. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council receives notes and accepts the minutes and recommendations of the Mama Advisory Committee meeting held on Friday, 26 February 2021.
Thank you. Councillor Gluckin.
Happy to second.
No worries. Councillor Thurley, do you wish to speak to that at all?
Just very quickly, Mr. Mayor, to note that under the new structure, tomorrow we'll be interviewing candidates for the board positions. I think we had 19 applications and we have made a short list of 9 that we're interviewing tomorrow. So very soon we'll have a board in place for Mama and the new structure.
Excellent. Okay. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. 11.2, minutes of the crime prevention meeting held on Tuesday, the 2nd of March, 2021. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you, through you, and I believe you're the representative on this, to move the recommendation as a motion that council receives, notes and accepts the minutes recommendations of the Crime Prevention Committee meeting held on Tuesday, 2 March 2021. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken, do you wish to speak to that at all?
Thank you. No.
No questions or debate. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. The minutes of the Floodplain Risk Management Committee meeting held on Thursday, the 11th of March. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move the council receives, notes and accepts the minutes and recommendations of the Floodplain Risk Management Committee meeting held on Thursday, 11th of March, 2021.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury.
Second that, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Thurley, do you wish to speak to that at all?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. There appears to be no further question or debate. I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. There are no documents for sealing. Officers' reports for consideration. 13.1, the development application 10.0.2020.38108.1 telecommunications facility data storage centre and 2-lot subdivision 121 Airport Drive, East Albury. Councillor King is leaving the chamber. Stand by. Thank you. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you, through you, to move the recommendation that council A, receives and notes the report, and B, determines to approve the application subject to conditions in attachment 13.1.7 at attachment 6 to our notes.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
And for the
I'll second.
Happy to second it. Councillor Glacken.
sorry, I should have included the additional wording of the telecommunication facility data storage.
Happy to recommit if you like. If you want to, if you wish to, I'll read it as it is now. That'd be great.
Yeah, that's looking pretty good. And it's got the, yep, okay. So grants consent to development application 10.2020.38108 for construction of a telecommunications facility data storage centre and 2-lot subdivision at Albury Airport, 121 Airport Drive, East Albury, lot 44 DP 1256679, subject to the conditions contained in the draft determinations included at attachment 7 to this report as referred earlier. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, you comfortable to second that?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. A question first from Councillor Stutchbury. Councillor Glacken. Councillor Stutchbury.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My question is to the relevant member of staff. Clearly, as council owns the land, an independent report from a planning person had to be sought. My question relates to how this is done. Do we have a panel of independent planners from which we randomly select a person to give us a report, or is it done in some other way?
Mr Christie.
Thank you for the question for you, Mr Mayor. So we do seek at least 3 quotes from generally locally based planning consultants. Sometimes, as we did previously with Pemberton Street, we've gone out of the area if there was no one local who did not have a conflict. But in this case, we generally seek at least 3 quotes. The decision will be based upon a variety of things. One will be around timeliness. Sometimes they have the capacity to do the work. Other times people don't always have the capacity to do the work at a point in time, but also then around the cost structure. But no, there's not a panel. It's not a tender as such. It's a decision made by staff depending upon the availability of relevant planning consultants and the cost structure they propose at a point in time.
Follow up, Mr Mayor?
Are you comfortable?
No, I have a follow-up question, Mr Mayor.
Yes, you can follow it up.
So was the decision to appoint the planning consultant for this particular item decided on because he was not so busy that he could do it for us, or because he gave us the cheapest quote?
Mr Christie.
Thank you for the question and for you, Mr Mayor. Again, as I said, there's a combination of factors, but in this case, the availability of the planning consultant to undertake the work at the time we were asking if we've undertaken was one of the key factors. Yes.
Councillor Salisbury.
I'm happy with the answer, but I'm not overly happy with the consultant's report.
Thank you. Councillor Glycan, to wish to open debate, thanks.
Yes, thank you. I note that the report indicates that the planning consultant used in this instance has indicated that this development is not necessarily suitable for this site, and I respect that that is their interpretation of the planning regulations, and I support the reasons that they have made comment on. However, on the other and converse side, we have significant land still available at that in that proximity. The land is being leased to the applicant, and the development is being constructed in such a way that it is removable and is in no way intended to be necessarily a permanent development on that land. It can be removed in a relatively short period of time, and it's constructed to be able to do so. Having said that, I would anticipate that they would like to be in that location for a significant number of years, but noting that they appreciate that it will not be a forever situation. I also note the proximity of appropriate infrastructure that will supplement and in fact enhance that location for that development. I therefore believe that we as a council would be doing the right thing by our community, by the developer, and by other organisations within that vicinity to be able to have this build and this development on that land. So I believe we should be approving this application on that basis. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a speaker against, Councillor Con.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I should start by saying that in speaking against this motion tonight, I'm not advocating that we should refuse consent for this development tonight, but rather that we should defer it and seek further comment. And the further comment that I think we should be seeking is from the Airport Users Advisory Group and from local emergency services. The proposal itself does not seem unreasonable based on the report that we've been provided, but we've sought the views of an independent planning consultant because this development is taking place on council land, and that report clearly recommends refusing this development. Council officers have responded to that report and provided a number of reasons why perhaps the development should still go ahead, but given that the development is taking place on council land, I don't think it's necessarily a good process to take the word from the officers. I think we should speak to the community representatives who are on the Airport Users Advisory Group. That committee exists for a reason, and also seek the views of the local emergency services who will be using the Emergency Operations Centre. I'd feel far more comfortable with this development going ahead if we sought those views in addition to council officers. Thanks.
Thank you. I have two speakers for. Councillor Glycan, you have a question?
Yes, indeed. To the most relevant member of staff through you, Councillor Cons just raised concerns that perhaps sufficient information hasn't been gathered from the emergency services users and the Airport Advisory Committee or other airport users. Can the most relevant member of staff please advise whether or not there's been any indication from any of those areas that they would not be happy or supportive, and also what sort of, I suppose, information may have been raised with those other users, whether it be informally or informally.
Thank you for the question, and for you, Mr. Mayor. In regards to the actual development application process, obviously it's a public process. It wasn't a hidden process. There was also noted at several times in local media, one around the application, but also secondly, in regards to previously when council also considered whether they would lease the land to them in the previous meeting function as well. So we don't believe that the matter's been hidden in any way, shape or form. It's been publicly available through from that process. So from a development application process, we're comfortable with the consultation component.
Through you,
Follow-up?
Mr Mayor. Sorry, if I could just add to that. The Airport Users Advisory Committee were also advised of the project in our briefing papers to them. So they will have awareness of the proposed facility. And I understand that the applicants have also been communicating with the RFS in relation to the capability of the facility and the opportunity for that to support our emergency response. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you.
Can I
Councillor
have a
Blacken.
follow-up? Thank you
Yep.
very much. Through the most relevant member of staff, please. Have there been any objections?
Through you, Mr Mayor, in terms of the discussion at the Airport Advisory Committee, certainly none were raised at that time. As Mr Christie's mentioned, the development application process also provided a further opportunity for tenants within the precinct to make any comment or raise any concerns about the development application, which aside from one, they did not do.
So
Thank
no
you.
objections. Thank you.
One objection.
Thank you. Through those, yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderman speaking for.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I, for one, don't have any issues with the independent planning report, and he notes that that it doesn't meet the guidelines of that the zoning, but he also makes some notes there about the fact that it's not unreasonable to conclude that the proposed development is not at odds with Albury Airport Master Plan. Should this be the case, then council could consider that the identified inconsistencies with the objectives and the public interest by independent assessment are not correct, and therefore the development should be approved. Now, in terms of the public interest, I think for the greater benefit of this community, not only just to the tenants around the airport, but just for the whole of our community, in terms of the capacity that this particular development provides us for data storage, I think that the benefit far outweighs any odds that we have with our Albury Airport Master Plan 2018. Now, there was only one objection. I need to make a comment here about the objection. And unfortunately, I think that the tone of the objection was, I'd take umbrage to. If that was done by any ordinary member of the community in terms of the wording and the way that the objection was worded, I would take umbrage and I would dismiss that particular objection out of hand. That the objection was lodged by a fellow councillor, in my view, is disgraceful. The tone in which it was delivered, and I think that particular councillor, and I'm happy to talk to him face to face, that there could have been other ways that he might have objected to this particular development, except in the words that he actually used. So from my perspective, the general benefit to the community and to the precinct far outweighs the what might be at odds with the Albury Airport Master Plan, and I, for one, have absolutely no hesitation in approving this development application as it currently stands. And in fact, I think that the benefit to Albury City as a community will be immense if this development goes ahead. It's also interesting to note that we have been through the process of getting the airport advisory user groups and also the other airport users to make some comment on this. There was no comment, so in my view, there would be no reason at all to delay this particular decision as Councillor Con is seeking to do.
Thank you. There are no questions. Another speaker for Councillor Thurley.
I'll be very brief, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to Mr. Laycock for his report. It was, as usual, very thorough and very detailed. But I'm prepared to accept that the state environmental planning policy infrastructure gives us the room to approve this development. It is not a business in the normal sense of those other businesses at the airport. It has no customers, it has no workers. It's simply a structure that is for the telecommunications purposes. So in that context, I don't believe it should be compared to other airport users, and therefore the issues around our master plan are, to me, not particularly relevant, and I think we should approve the matter.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. There appears to be no further speakers for or against. I will just speak briefly for this particular development, and I too agree with the previous speakers that the first point I note is that the master plan, when it was developed, probably really didn't have the notion that we would be including data centres in our city for backlog of information and easier transition of data into the cloud, and certainly providing us with a better service as consumers right across from the residential consumer to the business consumer to the emergency services consumer and the airport consumer. So from the benefit, I agree with Councillor Thurley, Vandervan and Gleichen, far outweighs the nuance of the master plan. I'm comfortable that the airport advisory group were across this particular proposition. I'm also comfortable that the applicant has satisfied all the requirements of the planning controls on this particular building. I believe that it is one of the things that steps us aside from other regional cities across New South Wales at this point, save for Newcastle. We are the second city in the state to be the recipient of this DA, so I would encourage my fellow councillors to support it. Councillor Gleichen, did you wish to close debate?
Yes, thank you. In essence, this application is permissible on that site, even within the airport master plan framework, because it is permissible with consent. The applicant is leasing the space from Albury City Council. We have more than sufficient space in the short and medium term to enable this lease to go ahead. It will benefit our community. There is support for this more broadly. The infrastructure surrounding the build is an attractor to this developer. It will benefit our city financially as well as systems-wise. And so I believe that we should be approving this application under the premise that it is permissible with consent and approved by council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clegg. I'm happy to put the motion as a division. All those in favour? Councillor Stutchery, Councillor Doxey, Councillor Mack, Councillor Gleichen, Councillor Thurley and Councillor Vandervan. Those against? Councillor Con. The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. If Councillor King could be returned to the chamber, thanks. And thanks, Mr. Laycock, for being available for questions. Okay, thanks. Let the record reflect that Councillor King has returned to the chamber. 13.2, draft amendment to the Albury Development Control Plan 2010, Willowbank Road, East Albury. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that Council A endorses the draft amendment to the Albury Development Control Plan 2010, being Part 20 Willowbank Road, East Albury for public exhibition purposes, and B, places the draft amendment and any supporting material on public exhibition for a minimum period of 28 days in accordance with Environmental Planning Assessment Act 1979 and Environmental Planning and Assessment Regulation 2000.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, just open debate on that.
Very briefly, Mr Mayor, we've discussed this matter before, and this really is a way of codifying what council has discussed in the past about how development should occur in this area. Tonight, all we're doing is endorsing something to go out on public display, and in 28 days or so, we'll have to consider whether we go ahead with this matter. It's a fairly routine matter, and good that we can codify exactly how things should work in this area.
Thank you. Speaker against, Councillor Con.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll be brief. I'm voting against this motion to be consistent with my strong views earlier in this term of council that this site should not have been zoned to permit industrial development this close to the Murray River, regardless of what conditions are being put in place.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers for or against? Happy to put the motion. All those in favour as a vision. Councillor Stutchbury, Councillor Doxey, Councillor King, Councillor Mack, Councillor Gluck, Councillor Thurl and Councillor Vanderman. Those against? Councillor Con. The motion is carried. Thank you. 13.3, draft Fredericks Park Master Plan and draft Murray Park Master Plan public exhibition results. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Con.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that Council A receives and notes the comments received through the public exhibition period for the draft Fredericks Park Master Plan and Murray Park Master Plan Attachment 1. B endorses the final version of the Fredericks Park Master Plan, including minor amendments Attachment 2. And C endorses the final version of the Murray Park Master Plan, including minor amendments Attachment 3.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Happy to second.
Thank you. Councillor Con, do you wish to speak to that?
Only briefly, Mr Mayor. We had some great, very specific feedback from members of the community, and I think our officers have responded really appropriately to those submissions, and we've had some minor amendments made to the master plans, such as a northern pathway extension at Fredericks Park. These are obviously, Fredericks Park is a really well-used and well-loved public facility, and I'm sure that the community will be looking forward to us allocating a budget to make some of these improvements, and I know that there are local residents really looking forward to Murray Park.
Thank you. There are no further speakers for or against. I'd just like to share those sentiments as well. In the nearly 9 years I've been on council, I've not seen so much feedback in relation to two particular parks, and they're very much loved by the residents, and I commend the staff for their changes, and certainly there was a focus on all abilities access. There was a focus on crossing from Fredericks to the off-leash area, and there's been some discussion, as we mentioned in previous meetings, about how we could utilise part of Fredericks Park as a small dog off-leash area as well in the future. So to be commended for your efforts from the staff, and certainly people are very passionate about these parks. So I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you. 13.4, the council's payment of expenses and provision of facilities policy public exhibition submissions. Councillor Vanderman.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I move the recommendation as a motion. Council A receives and notes the further information outlined in this report regarding levels of executive and research assistance provided at other councils in New South Wales. B adopts the councillor's payment of expenses and provision of facilities policy as considered on 8th of February 2021, and C places the councillor's payment of expenses and provision of facilities policy on the Albury City Public Register of Policies and Procedures.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken.
Happy to second that.
Councillor Vanderman, do you wish to speak to that?
No, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Speaker against, Councillor Con.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll be very brief again. I'll be voting against the policy this evening, and that's consistent with my position 4 years ago. That's a specific objection to ratepayers footing the bill for councillors to bring their partners to functions. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderman,
I missed that. Sorry, the last section of the...
Councillor Con, did you wish to repeat it?
Yeah, absolutely. I said that's a specific objection to the ratepayers footing the bill for councillors to bring their partners to functions. Councillor
Vanderman, there are no more speakers for or against. Do you wish to close debate?
Yeah, from my understanding that's not part of the policy. It's if spouses go or partners go to these functions, the councillor foots the bill. So unless it's specifically required that the spouse goes. So I don't understand what Councillor Con's voting against this for. But anyway, regardless of that, this is just part of the process of putting this policy into our public register of policies and procedures.
Thank you. Just a point of clarification before I put the motion, Councillor Con, you have a question?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Given we've got two different understandings of the content of the policy that we're adopting into our public register, I was hoping to ask the relevant member of staff, please, to clarify whether the version of the policy that we're adopting tonight includes a provision for the partners of councillors to be paid for by council, or whether that has to be covered by the council. Thanks.
Ms Squire.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for the question. So clause 3.2 specifies that spouse and partners' expenses at conferences will not be reimbursed, but it does have provision for there may be limited instances where certain costs incurred by a councillor on behalf of their spouse may be accommodated. So there is some provision in there in regards to those payments of expenses. Sorry, I'm just looking for any further additions. Thanks, Kate. Happy for you to expand on that.
So just
Ms.
further to
Stevens?
that, 3.2 does clearly say an example is where they, a spouse may need to accompany a counsellor providing carer support to the counsellor. So there would need to be some fairly strong reasons and criteria to be met where we would reimburse expenses.
Councillor Con, do you have a follow-up?
I did. I had a follow-up question. If I recall correctly reading, and I'm happy to be corrected, there were two different sections that dealt with partners. So one was conferences, which require travel, which you've just spoken to, but I understand there was also a section to do with functions in the local area.
Ms Stevens or Ms Squire, anyone prepared to take a run at that one?
You may need to take
Yeah.
that one on notice.
No, through you, Mr. Mayor, that provision's been in place for a number of iterations of the policy where there are council functions and spouses are able to attend in that instance only, apart from those other examples that have been provided.
I've seen 4.5, civic duty related to matters of a community or charitable nature. There's some reference to spouses in that. Is that what you're referencing, Councillor Con?
That's the one I'm referring to, yeah.
Okay, well, that's clarified. Councillor Vanderman?
Oh, look, I mean, I read this right through. In fact, I did point out a couple of little errors in the report to Mr. Zachnich, and I had no qualms at all about the way it dealt with the provision of paying for spouses. So I'm not sure why this is now being raised.
Okay, happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. 13.5, display of the pride flag in the Albury City Council chamber. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that Council A declines the request for permanent display of the pride flag in the Albury City Council chamber, and B, in accordance with the civic flag display protocol, approves temporary display of the pride flag in the council chamber during council meetings on national days or periods of celebration, with dates for 2021 to be determined by officers following consultation with the Youth Council.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken.
Happy to second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, do you wish to speak to that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do. I first of all would like to commend the Youth Council for their activism in this space. They are a very worthwhile organisation and adjunct to council in that they bring the views of youth forward. I would, however, like to commend Eli Davin, who said and reported by David Johnson in the paper that it wanted council to show Albury's support for the LGBTQI+ community. It will hopefully provide people with a feeling of safety and respect. Albury Council has got a really good track record of supporting the community. And in 2014, the council endorsed marriage equality. They lit up Mummery in the rainbow colours. So this council does have a good record. And I do understand why this has been brought before us. But the issue I have, and it's outlined clearly in the report, is that there are multiple groups in our community who would perhaps like to be more visually represented in this council chamber. And we have taken the strong view that the flags of Australia, the state, and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander flags are those that should be here. I believe it's appropriate on occasions of celebration that something special should be done. So in NAIDOC week, for example, we do other things other than simply raise the flags. And I think in this space, we need to take every opportunity to celebrate the diverse people we have in our community. But as Eli has said, we have a good record of doing that. And I think we need to continue to do that.
Thank you. Speaker against, Councillor Vandervan.
I'm speaking against, but I also like to move an amendment to item B, please.
Yep. Are you proposing that we consider an amendment, or are you asking the mover and seconder?
I'm asking the mover and the seconder in the first instance if they'll accept an amendment to change the wording in Part B to, at the end, to be determined by officers with the final decision to be made by Albury, by the council itself, rather than the youth council. Oh.
Okay.
Understanding that, I'll move an amendment, Mr. Mayor, that that the dates for 2021 be determined by officers with the final decision to be made by Albury Council.
Councillor Blacken, you indicated you wish to support that amendment?
Yep, happy to support that amendment.
Okay, we'll just wait for the amendment to be placed on the screen.
Sorry? Yeah. I could have done that too, David, if I had realised. I know, but I didn't realise there were any glasses out there. I offered to share mine.
Okay, Councillor Vandervan, that's your amendment. Did you wish to speak to that now? Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think it is the purview of this council to make those final decisions about what flags are to be displayed in the council chamber. And whilst I understand that the Youth Council are very proactive in this space, I also need to talk about Eli and the fact that Eli is 17 years old. He's already been a member of two, from my understanding, two political parties in his short life. And to be quite honest, I think he's been a member of the Labor Party, and also now he's a member of the Greens. So we've got political party affiliations showing out already in the Youth Council. And I think that the Youth Council, whilst they do a good job, need to focus on some more stuff that is of benefit to the youth here, rather than worrying too much about what flags are being displayed in the council chambers. a lot of people, and I'm saying that everybody that has spoken to me about this, once it was publicised that they wanted to show the pride flag in the chamber, not one of them has said, yeah, go for it, get it done. They've all said, no, do not show the pride flag in the chamber. Now, I am representing the voice of those people that came to me and said that they don't want it shown in the chamber. Now, the Youth Council are there to provide feedback to this council in terms of what the youth want in this city. And I'm happy to listen to them. I've been part of that Youth Council. I've been part of the selection process for Youth Council and supported the Youth Council. But when this is a clear party political attempt to influence this council into what we do, I think we should knock it on the head, and we should absolutely say that it is our decision when that pride flag gets displayed, not the Youth Council's decision or the officer's decision. Happy to accept a request from the Youth Council via the officers about when it should be displayed, but it needs to be this council's decision as to when that flag, if and when that flag gets to be displayed, not the Youth Council's decision. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Vanderman. Speak against Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Basically, most of that was totally irrelevant. I don't care which party Eli Davin's been in. I don't care if he's in the Communist Party, the Liberal Party, Corey Bernardi's party. Who cares? This is simply the Youth Council asking us to do something. And what we've got in the first motion, the substantive motion up there, is that after consultation with Youth Council, our officers will determine something. We do this so many times. If we had to make every decision relating to what happens in this city, nothing would get done. We trust our officers to listen carefully, and we trust our officers to do stuff. And the Youth Council, I don't believe, are some bunch of left-wing nutcases. In many cases, I think I'd be further to the left than some of the things we're seeing here tonight. I believe that the first motion is appropriate. I don't believe we should permanently display the flag, but I believe that on certain days and certain occasions, as we do with things like white ribbon and all that sort of stuff, there are plenty of opportunities where people can have their view and can have a symbolic display. And that's what I propose, and I commend the Youth Council for the suggestion. And in the end, it will be after consultation. I don't believe we should come in over the top and say, you get what we give you. No, we should listen.
Thank you. Speaker 4, Councillor Blackham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to speak for the amendment, and in essence, speaking largely for the original motion as well. Councillor Thurley, I think might like to read the amendment in the last part of that, because it says quite quite clearly that it would be determined by officers following consultation with the Youth Council, with the final decision to be made by council. So in essence, it does do, as Councillor Thurley spoke most passionately about just now. It consults with the Youth Council, but that final decision would be made by the council, which in essence, I think is really the substance of the original substantive motion. So that's really why I'm happy to support the amendment, because it really enhances that opportunity for consultation. It ensures the Youth Council have a voice, but that a decision would finally be made by council. And so that's why I am supporting that amendment. I would like to see that we are able, as a council, and I can only hope that the Youth Council will continue to do this, that we represent our community. There are many other organisations and groups who would like us to show support for them. And so I agree that we should not be hoisting this flag or representation on an ongoing basis. but it should be there for some form of representation, because I would like to see other groups and organisations, as Councillor van der Ven referred to, being recognised and public awareness being raised for on their behalf through council. So we've got organisations and annual recognition dates for white ribbon, blue ribbon, breast cancer. They hang bras over on the causeway. There's an organisation, I think it's again at cancer, and it's the blue underpants. They hang blue underpants around. There are a myriad of things that we have within our community that people belong to. And I would like to see us look and avail those organisations of a voice within our council as well. So I'd like to see us consider not only offering an opportunity for the pride flag or the rainbow flag to be flown in this chamber, but again, for a specific period acknowledged by the calendar, for us to look at these other entities as well. And from my perspective, I'd like to see that so that we as councillors, when we're here in the chamber, would see that representation. So I'd like to see that it was somewhere with our gaze, as opposed to the people in the chamber here for those nights. And I can only hope that we might be able to find an opportunity for each of those organisations for the first time that date comes around in the calendar of council, noting that it's normally 4 years, that we might have an opportunity for those people to be able to present their emblem and to explain the background of that emblem to us. So I see this as an opportunity for us to be able to appreciate the broader community and the many aspects and myriad of organisations within that community. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gleichen. Speaker against is Councillor Con.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have a youth council that's an outstanding group of young people who are passionate about a number of issues and who give up their time after school to advise us on how we can include and support young people. And they have asked us to fly the pride flag. There may well be any number of other groups with emblems deserving of recognition, but none of those groups made a submission to our civic flag protocol. The youth council did. Councillor van der Ven said he thought we should do what the Youth Council asked us to support young people. They've asked us specifically to fly the pride flag in the chamber because they said that that is a meaningful gesture of inclusion. And I understand, and I'm happy to be corrected if I'm wrong, that that was a unanimous decision of the Youth Council. And I'm quite disturbed with personal attacks that have been made against a minor and a teenager in this chamber tonight. I was prepared to support the original recommendation, which, as we noted, actually denies the original request that was made. I think the officer's recommendation was a really appropriate way of meeting the request that the youth councillors have made within the parameters of the civic flag display protocol that we just adopted. The decision that we would have been making tonight in supporting the original recommendation would have been deciding to fly that particular flag in the chamber on a temporary basis on national days and periods of celebration, leaving the very minor detail of what in particular those days should be to the Youth Council. And I think we should be empowering and engaging with those young people to let them make this very basic decision. I don't think we should be patronising them by saying we should come over and above and to first of all deny the request for it to be displayed permanently, to say it should be done temporarily, but we don't trust you with the decision to pick what days. We have this incredible group of people who've taken the step to make a formal submission on a protocol, which is unusual for youth councils previously. This is clearly really, really important to this incredible group of young people, and I think we should be empowering them. I would object to the amendment and support the original recommendation. Thanks.
Thank you. Speaking for the amendment, Councillor Stutchbury.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the outset, I'd like to say that I disagree with 99% of what Councillor van der Ven said in his rant when he moved this amendment. But in fact, I do agree with the underlying premise that council, we councillors, should make the final decision after receiving the recommendation from the Youth Council and the comments from the staff. So that is all I would like to say.
Thank you. Speaker for, no speakers against. Councillor Doxey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I take on board the comments of my fellow councillors. I understand the feeling and the emotion behind the pride flag, and I support that. However, the decision that we take is based upon the fact that we were elected by the community to make these decisions. With all due respect to the Youth Council, they were not elected by the community to make these decisions. I think the amendment is right and it is proper and is what we are sitting here for, to make that decision. It is our decision at the end of the day as the councillors. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Doxey. There appears to be no further speakers for or against the amendment. Councillor Vanderman, do you wish to close debate on the amendment?
No, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, happy to put the amendment. Those in favour? Those against? The amendment is one. It becomes a motion. Councillor Vanderman, did you wish to close
thanks,
debate
Mr.
on the
Mayor.
motion?
Thank you. No.
Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Okay, we have 13.6 or 14.1, which is the Resident Resource Recovery Voucher Program. Councillors, please. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the council receives and notes the progress of the implementation of the Resident Resource Recovery Voucher Program.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderman.
Happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, just open debate on that item.
Not much to be said. It's a great program and it seems to be working extremely well. So I'm all in favour.
Thank you. Any other further speakers or against? No. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thanks, Ms. Boland, for coming in for that very short presentation. Okay. CM 15 delegates reports for noting. 15.1, the Murray-Darling Basin Authority MDBA Basin Climate Resilience Summit held on the 11th to 12th of March 2021. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr. I move the council receives and notes the report.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken.
Happy to second that.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, just to speak to that at all?
Just to note that the Murray-Darling Basin Authority ran a climate summit in Canberra and the MDA was invited to participate. And I guess my report is a little bit more graphic than most council reports have been. The one thing that became very clear during this summit was that the time frames are becoming increasingly short. And so from our point of view as a council, we have made a number of steps and included in our policies and procedures activities which relate to climate change and so on. I believe we need to step up the activities in all the areas such as assets, infrastructure, procurement, capital projects and resource reuse. We have, I think, a moral obligation to do it, but in any case, even if you don't accept that, there's a financial reason for doing all of this stuff in that we can do things better, cheaper, and obviously more sustainably. So I commend the report. And one last point was that the Red Cross actually spoke at this conference, and despite everyone's belief the Red Cross only deals with disasters, they have a long-term plan called Climate Resilient or Climate Ready Communities, and it's an online resource which is available. And it's not for councils, it's for people. For people, what can you do in your street? What can you do in your community? So I commend my report, and I also commend the work so far done by the Red Cross. Thank you.
Thank you. No further questions or debate. I'm happy to put the report. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. 15.2, the Murray-Darling Association Delegates Report, March 2021. Councillor Thurley.
Me again. Council receive and note the Murray-Darling Association Delegates Report for tabling at council.
Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Thurley, just to speak to that.
A routine matter now, in that we publish a report of board meetings and other meetings throughout the Murray-Darling Basin by Murray-Darling councils, and it's simply there for the information of councillors. I don't wish to speak to it.
Thank you. There are no questions. Happy to put that. All those in favour? Anyone against? Motion is carried. CM 16, notices of urgent business. I've not been made of any. Councillor Thurley.
I guess this one always gets me, urgent business or general business. I do wish to comment on the event that was held in QET Square last Thursday night. I'd like to certainly compliment Lynn Wallace and all the other council staff that were associated with this event. It was a fantastic event. It was chess being played in QE2 Square with a grand piano and a violinist playing, Helena Kernigan and Kaori Sparks, and lots of kids playing chess. It was a great event, and I think it shows what a great place our QE2 Square can be. So my compliments to the staff, and I think the community would be happy to go back there for another event. It was fantastic. The buzz was great.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. With that, there is no further urgent business or business of council. The meeting is closed at 7:16. Thank you.